Yeah, nice to have you here. Happy New Year to all those who haven't met me yet this year. And just a quick outline. We have roughly an hour, and in which I run you through a presentation that I've created about the conjunctive. And 45 minutes of that hour will be the presentation, roughly. Might be a bit quicker, depends. You might have heard that there is two conjunctives. If you don't know what a conjunctive is, you will understand that at the end of this presentation. Just lean back and relax. There's nothing you have to learn here. There's nothing you have to remember. All you have to do here, and you don't even have to, all I would like to achieve here is that you understand something. Yeah? You don't even have to understand everything. Just take it easy. Enjoy. Learning anything is actually a joyful activity, nothing to worry about or to worry about your performance. A quick overview and already the conclusion of this workshop. Let's take a look at the Konjunktiv 1, gehe. And those who have had already one lesson in German, they will always start with saying things like he goes, I go, and you see something is off, and that's the E. And because the first thing you learn is it's actually geht. So it's a bit weird to see gehe. Yeah, but it's proper German, believe me. And you see the Konjunktiv 1 is using the same stem as the presence. It takes it from the infinitive. I go into detail of everything as we go. Same example or another example of another verb that is also irregular, but it doesn't matter what you see here in presence. We even have an umlaut here, which in Konjunktiv doesn't appear in Konjunktiv 1. Konjunktiv 2 is a little bit different. One more, sehe, sieht. You see the differences here. Yeah? So you take the stem of the infinitive and you don't change it. Konjunktiv 2 looks a bit weirder. And you see gingen. If you had a couple of lessons, very likely not before A2 or B1, you must have come across the preteritum. And pre, like prehistoric, means something that was before. So it's a past form that, ironically, you actually never really use. Yeah. You can see the screen. Can people see the screen? Okay. Peculiar. Otherwise, restart your session. Yeah, I will see. This is what we look for. So preteritum is ging, and all we do to build the Konjunktiv 2 is to put an E at the end. Thank you for the feedback. Yeah. So any issue, restart the session, but share it with me. So if there's several people who cannot see something or hear something, then I push the button. Now, if you have worked with me already a little bit, then you know that, the stem, yeah, that you never really use the preteritum. It's okay to recognize, and it's also, with a bit of practice, easy to recognize it, but you never actively use it, with very few exceptions. And the Konjunktiv 1, I might have mentioned at one point, you also never use. So all this, what I just told you, is completely useless for you. Isn't that beautiful? I nevertheless will go into detail. Yeah, you might learn with other students or with other teachers, or might be in some German class that kind of forces you to go through all these things, and it's also just joyful. So what do you use instead? Instead of Konjunktiv 1, instead of this beautiful, simple-looking form of Konjunktiv 2, you use the simple form of the Konjunktiv 2. And the simple form is it's pretty close to English. You take the Konjunktiv 2 of werden and the infinitive. And that looks like this. Würde gehen, and in English that's he would go. And that's all it means. There's really nothing else to it. But we could stop here. So you translate would plus infinitive as would plus infinitive, would go. There's nothing to explain, nothing to understand. All you have to learn is the forms of würde, which you will, of course, learn in a minute. This is all you will ever use before you reach C2. C2 people must possibly learn this to teach this to people who don't need it. Yeah? But let's take a look. So the Konjunktiv 1 is used for reported speech. That means you will find it in the work of journalists in news, very likely, or in kind of reports where you report what someone said, like you are in court and someone writes, how do you call this? Not a protocol, it's in German it's a protocol, yeah? You write what is being said there. So let's imagine Peter says something directly to Maria. Ich fahre gern Auto, I like to drive a car, I drive my car. And Maria then tells it to Paul. Yeah, she reports it to Paul. Hey, Paul, you know what Peter said recently? Peter says, or Peter said, if you want to put it in the past, fährt gern Auto. Well, you see there's a T, not an E like we did before. Well, this is one possibility. You take the normal transcript. Thank you, Mark. You take the normal ending from the present tense. But if you wanted to use Konjunktiv 1, you would use fahre gern Auto. Konjunktiv 1. Now, what's the difference? Why do I introduce this to you? Well, you could use both, and you would make something very clear. The distance to the information or the speaker that passed on that information. If I use the presence, say Peter said that he likes to drive, then Maria more or less says, I believe him. Yeah, she kind of gives a statement, that's a fact. If I use the Konjunktiv 1, I take distance from that message. I simply neutrally convey what I have heard. So there is absolutely no way to find out whether Maria believes Peter or not. Yeah, you could interpret that. If she uses the Konjunktiv 1, she possibly doesn't believe him too strongly because otherwise she would have used the presence. But again, it's theoretically, it's something very neutral, which makes sense because you use it for journalism, and journalists are supposed to be neutral. If they are not neutral, they are not journalists, they are just idiots. Yeah? Vanya, worst case you have to, yeah? Give it 2 more minutes. If it doesn't work, worst case you have to look at the view of this thing. How do you call this? You can watch it tomorrow. Yeah, you'll get an email. My brain doesn't work that well. Now let's take a look at the Konjunktiv 1 form, at least not outside of what I'm doing here. Thank you. The Konjunktiv 1 for regular verbs. Let's say sagen. And sagen, the G, with a bit of fantasy, it turns into a Y, and then you have the English meaning, to say. And all forms we need. It's very simple. You take the stem of the infinitive, as we said, you add an E to it in all forms, and then the usual endings, with 2 exceptions where you see that X, there is no ending. I'll make that clearer later. Recording, thank you. And but the endings are basically the same as those endings that you learn in the first week of learning German anywhere. Yeah, maybe not in my course because I don't work with tables and stuff, but nevertheless, the endings never change. You just leave something away. And you see, ich sage, it's basically the same as the presence, which you will see in a minute. This E is the marker for the Konjunktiv 1 and also partially for the Konjunktiv 2, as you will see soon. So take a look at the presence just to compare. Take the same stem, no E, of course, because there's no conjunctive, and you have basically the same endings, yeah, except for the he, it, she. There you have a T instead of an X. And you see here the 3 equal signs. That means these forms look identical, and that causes trouble. Because if it's identical, how do I know I'm distancing myself from what has been said? Or I'm not distancing myself. Let's take a look at irregular verbs. Again, I go deeper and deeper as you follow. Fahren, to drive, if you haven't seen that word yet. And stem, the E as usual, little decoration, and the endings. No magic, very simple. Nothing queer here, nothing irregular. So it doesn't really matter whether a verb is regular or irregular. For the Konjunktiv 1, they are all regular. Funny enough. And comparing this to the presence, you see again the same 3 persons are identical to the Konjunktiv 1. And what to do with this? It's very simple. The endings I forgot. If the Konjunktiv 1 is identical, you use the Konjunktiv 2. Remember in the beginning I had a big blue X. Yeah. because you don't need the conjunctive eins. But these three you never use in the conjunctive eins, the ich, the he, it, she, and the sie. And you also really don't use the wir, I mean, sorry. You never use the ihr and you never use the du. So actually you don't use ich, du, wir, ihr, or sie. You only use the s. Yeah, and by s, I just put s there, but it is of course he, it, she, like er, as sie. So these three forms, that's all you use in the conjunctive one. If ever, yeah. Again, I want to repeat this. You actually never use the conjunctive eins, but you know, there's some people, yeah, that enjoy this stuff. So 99%, it's always wiggle room for exceptions, but usually you just use that. So let's take a look at some special verbs that you need to create other tenses or forms. And I'll give you examples later. Haben, sein, and werden are what we call auxiliary verbs. In English, if you've heard it or watched some technical stuff, they have auxiliary power. Yeah, something that is a kind of support power, helper power. So these are helper verbs. In German, we call them Hilfsverben. And haben, sein you use for the past tense, while you use werden for passive the future, which you will see today too. So let's take a look. We take the stem of the infinitive as usual. And the stem, if you don't know it yet, is everything but the ending en. With sein, we don't have the e because it would be weird, seien. So we only kill the n and we have the stem. So nothing magical here. We add the e and also to the sei, but the sei is a bit more picky, as to be or not to be is the greatest question ever asked, and therefore it is a little bit peculiar, like a diva. So the first and the third person don't get an ending, and the one in parentheses you can leave away, yeah, but you can also use them. And you put the endings there, and you see no extra ending for the first and third person. And this is the form you need, the third person. Now, let's take a look at the past form. How do I express the past with a conjunctive eins? Again, don't try to remember this or write this down. Relax and just look at it and say, I've seen it, it's fine. Yeah, there's really nothing to remember here, except maybe that if you ever use it, it's just the third person singular, the s, he, it, she. So sagt, habe geschlafen. So he said he was sleeping. In English, you have no way of finding out. It's the context that tells you, okay, it's a reported speech. It's someone telling me something about someone else. But in German, it's very clear. If someone uses habe geschlafen, it's a very neutral way of saying that without taking sides. And in the past, we have two possibilities. If you're not there, this is a little teaser. Sagt, sei gelaufen. Yeah, sei, you see sein. It looks weird, but it looks Italian almost. He said he was running. Yeah, in English that's weird. You use was, but in German it's he kind of be running, but it translates like that. Then we have the future. Sagt, werde sterben. He says he will die. Yeah, very optimistic examples today. I needed short words. And we have two futures. One that's even further in the future. Sagt, werde gestorben sein. I actually have a whole live class on that somewhere, but you don't actually need that anytime soon. That's B2 stuff. Yeah, the past form is more interesting. But again, this is really just to show you how it's also how you can use this in the past and the future. You never use that. Yeah. Special appearances. So the conjunctive eins will come your way if you are a faithful Christian. Let me show you when. And if you have German friends that invite you to their birthdays, the first thing you will hear if you join a German birthday with joyous people celebrating that birthday, er lebe hoch. Yeah, 3 cheers for him is what the dictionary says. I've never heard that in English, but hopefully that's the right translation. So Long live the king, something like this. Yeah, he may live highly. Yeah. So that's they will say that 3 times. Er lebe hoch, er lebe hoch, er lebe hoch. Or hoch soll er leben, but that's a different approach. Then you have man nehme, which basically translates as you take. Man is a general you. And that's usually in recipes, but that might have already changed. In older recipe books, cooking books, you will find still man nehme. And man is a third person, and therefore it should normally be man nimmt. But here it's just regular and adding the E from the Konjunktiv 1. Now it gets a bit more religious. Gott sei Dank is a fixed expression. Thanks God. So thank be God maybe is something we can literally translate here. And this is the part from the Bible, I think. Yeah, I'm outing myself here. It's the Vater Unser. It's the, I'm not sure what it's called in English, but I think Our Father, dein Reich komme, dein Wille geschehe. Can you actually identify this? Reich, everybody should know, who learns German should know the Third Reich. And kommen is easy, it's to come. So, thy Reich, come. Thy will, what happens with thy will? Here it is. Yeah, I translated it as your kingdom come, your will happen. Yeah, or your kingdom shall come. Yeah, good translation. Geschehen is not to become, Jeff. Geschehen is really to happen. To become is theoretically werden, but it's almost never used in that meaning. Last thing is werde Licht, a lovely thing. So if you enter your flat, coming home in the dark, and you just turn it on and you just say es werde Licht while you click the button, let there be light. Yeah, and I just wanted to show you that the endings here are exactly, they're very unusual, they are konjunktiv. So this is where you might find this. These are fixed expressions. I wouldn't even bother looking for grammar in my head for these. You just learn them as they are. They are short enough. And yeah, genau.